You ever, just look at a single sugar crystal, the way it sparkles in the light? It's something we see every single day, but have you ever really stopped to wonder how it got there? Well, its origin story is this massive, incredible industrial journey. So today, let's follow that little sparkle all the way back to its source and uncover the adventure it takes. And that's really the big question, isn't it? How does a giant grass, and I mean sugarcane, can grow up to 20 feet tall? How does that become the pure, sweet little crystals sitting in your kitchen? It sounds kind of impossible, but we're about to find out. And wow, this slide really puts that whole transformation into perspective. I mean, look at that. On the left, you've got this rugged, tough, fibrous sugarcane stalk. And on the right, the final, delicate product. It's an epic journey from the field to the factory, from a raw plant to pure, sweet sugarose. Okay, so our story begins right here, deep inside the sugarcane stalk. Now, this isn't just some tough woody plant, it's basically a natural treasure chest. It spends its days soaking up the sun and storing all that energy in the form of this really sweet, sugary juice. So where exactly is all this sugar hiding? If you look at this cross-section, you can see it's not spread out evenly. Nope. Most of it is packed into these soft-walled, low-fiber cells called parenchyma cells. You can think of them like millions of tiny, fragile vaults just filled with liquid gold. And just how much treasure are we talking about here? It's pretty amazing, actually. A full 11–15% of the sugarcane stalk's total weight is pure sucrose. The plant makes it for its own energy, of course, but, well, we've gotten pretty good at borrowing it. All right, so the sugar is locked inside the stalk. The next big step is obviously getting it out. And this is where the journey leaves the quiet, sunny field and heads straight for the noise and the power of the sugar mill. The real adventure is just getting started. First things first, the harvest. In a lot of places, believe it or not, the cane is still cut by hand before getting loaded onto these massive trucks. And here, time is absolutely critical. That harvested cane has to get to the mill as fast as possible. We're talking usually within 16 hours, to stop that precious sugar from breaking down. It's a real race against the clock. And welcome to the sugar mill. This is where the real magic happens. But the first challenge is a huge one. How in the world do you get all that juice out of thousands and thousands of these tough, fibrous stalks? So the very first step is all about prep work. Before you can even think about squeezing the juice out, you have to break open all those little treasure rooms, those parenchyma cells we saw. The cane gets fed into these giant shredders that just rip the stalks into smaller, fibrous pieces. This is so important because it dramatically increases the surface area and makes all that sugar accessible. Now, once the cane is shredded, there are two main ways to get that juice out. You can either go with brute force, that's milling, which is basically just squeezing it like crazy, or you can take a more subtle approach with diffusion, which is all about washing the sugar out. Let's take a quick look at both. So the path of milling is all about immense pressure. The shredded cane goes through a whole series of these giant roller tandems. The first set gives it a powerful squeeze. Then, hot water gets sprayed onto the leftover fiber. That's a process called imbibition, which helps dissolve even more sugar. And you guessed it, the next set of rollers squeezes that out. This whole crush, wash, squeeze cycle repeats over and over to get every last drop of sweetness. Diffusion, on the other hand, is less about force and more about clever chemistry. The shredded cane is spread out on this long conveyor belt and hot water is passed through it, but in the opposite direction. This water gently washes the sugar out of all those ruptured cells, and it gets more and more concentrated as it moves along. Pretty smart, right? Okay, we've got the juice. But wait, we are not even close to being done. This raw juice is murky, it's brown, and it is full of all kinds of impurities. Before it can even dream of becoming sugar, it has to pass a series of really tough purification trials. And this is why that purification is so important. The juice is this super complex mixture. I mean, yeah, it has the sucrose we want, but it's also got a ton of other things we definitely don't, like tiny particles of cane fiber, colloids, salts, proteins. All this stuff has to go. One of the key ways they clean it up is called phosphatation. It sounds complicated, I know, but it's actually a really clever bit of chemistry. They add phosphoric acid and lime to the juice, and they react to form these tiny solid particles. These particles act like little magnets, trapping all the fine, suspended gunk. This whole glob of impurities then floats right to the surface, where it can just be skimmed off. And the results are just wow. A successful purification can reduce the cloudiness or the turbidity of the juice by up to 95%. It gets rid of all those tiny particles and even knocks down the color a bit. That murky liquid is finally becoming a clear, light-colored juice. We've extracted it, we've purified it, and now, finally, we are at the grand finale. This is the moment we've all been waiting for. This is where science and, honestly, a little bit of magic come together to turn a sweet liquid into a solid, sparkling crystal. So this final stage happens in 4 key steps. First, that purified juice gets boiled to evaporate most of the water, which creates this thick, supersaturated syrup. Next, this syrup is seeded with microscopic sugar crystals. This gives the dissolved sucrose something to latch onto and grow. Then, the whole mix gets spun at crazy high speeds in a centrifuge, which flings off all the remaining liquid. And that liquid, by the way, is molasses, leaving behind just the pure sugar crystals. And finally, a blast of hot air dries them, and the transformation is complete. And there you have it. From a towering grass in a sunny field, through shredders and giant rollers and all these chemical reactions, to the pure, simple sucrose that we use every day. The journey is over. The treasure has been claimed. So the next time you stir a spoonful of sugar into your coffee, maybe just take a second to appreciate the absolutely incredible journey it took to get there. It's not just sweetness in a bowl. It's the result of a long, fascinating process of engineering, chemistry, and, yeah, a little bit of agricultural magic.